We're live. Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. And we respectfully acknowledge that we live and work in Mi'kmaq as a steward of the ancestral territory of the Mi'kmaq people. We are all treaty people. The agenda changes. I don't have any particular changes myself. Anybody? Motion to approve?
I'll move that we approve the agenda.
Moved by Sharon, seconded by Tom. Discussion, all those in favor? Opposed, motion's carried. Public input, I'm unaware of any.
No.
That's correct? Good.
Correct.
Minutes of the previous meeting, committee of the whole, errors or omissions? Hearing none, a motion to approve? Moved by Clarissa, seconded by Sharon. Discussion, all those in favor? Opposed, motion's carried. Public input, and you guys don't count on that, so don't put your hands up. There isn't any, and that's the first time in a long while that there isn't even actually anybody here. Of course, the weather's not great. Matters arising, 7.1, planning matters, MGA amendments.
Not MGA amendments.
Floodplain.
mapping.
Well, 7.1 is what's on my agenda, that's all I can tell you. You gave me an old copy, okay, so there you go.
Right, good evening, council. So,
Okay.
what we have today is sort of a check-in on some previous direction that we received actually just about a year ago. So in December of 23, we brought.
Floodplain.
You need the mic, sorry.
Oh, thank you. Are we on?
It's on,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay. Yeah, so in December of 23, staff brought a presentation forward to council regarding an offer that was received from the province regarding some potential funding to undertake municipal floodline mapping work, and that included looking at the existing data that we have, identifying gaps in the data, and then ultimately producing a standard that would allow for floodplain mapping to be produced for the entire municipality. This is something that's being undertaken by the province-wide, and they have essentially committed to, by 2027, having flood maps in place for the entire province. And that relates back to the Municipal Government Act and the statements of provincial interest. So there's a statement around flood mapping, which currently there are only 5 identified floodplain that are relevant to that statement, and they're in Bedford, Sackville, and a few others, none in Chester. But the goal here is to get more detailed mapping for the rest of the province, because as we know, with climate change and even without that, overland flooding continues to be an issue. So we brought that forward. It seemed like a very good opportunity. The grant was initially $100,000, and then it was actually increased up to $500,000, and that would have allowed us to basically. The intent would be to hire a consultant to undertake that work. And so, like I said, it would be data collection, identification, and then also a public engagement campaign to consult with the community, get feedback from them, local knowledge, and then also discuss the implications of this work, which will eventually likely lead to planning and regulatory changes in those identified floodplain areas. So it all sounded good and still is, but I think our understanding of the program has changed, and also sort of priorities and staffing resources may be in a different place now than we were last December with sort of some of our longer term projects. So we wanted to come back and check in. There have been some delays both from the province and on our side in getting the agreement signed. So the agreement has not been signed and no funds have been received yet. So I think that still puts us in a position where if we choose to back out, we could do so. I think part of the recommendation here obviously is that council reconsider and potentially direct staff to refuse the funding. Part of the reason that recommendation is our recommendation, because this is important work, and we believe that, is that if a municipality chooses, or at least our understanding is that if the municipality chooses not to participate, that the province will essentially hire a consultant and undertake the same work. The difference would be that we won't have the direct control over that consultant, so around some of the public engagement things, but My understanding and my intent, if council goes with the direction here, would be that we would act as a willing participant and stakeholder in any process that they have. And I think that we would, certainly be included and consulted with.
They'd come and see us one way or the other.
Right, exactly. And so, to the best of our staff's knowledge, the work will be done either way. And again, given sort of current council priorities and the other work that we're undertaking, we wanted to check in. We didn't actually have a motion originally directing staff to proceed. It was just sort of a discussion. So there's no rescinding needed, but we're essentially here for this discussion and further
Well,
direction.
It'd be nice for us to take something off of our darn workload,
That was how
because we
felt.
can't get enough of what's on the workworkload done.
And in
If we're
particular,
gonna do it anyway.
yeah, and in particular, this piece hits kind of a sore spot because procurement is where, we've got a, I don't know how we characterize it, but there's a lot of work for procurement right now. And so this would, with the half funding, all of that went through procurement, and this would be another major project to.
Does anybody have any issues with the province doing it instead of us?
No, I just think they should do it anyway after they dump coastal protection stuff. That's the least, we should dump, yeah.
And that's
That's my
actually,
opinion.
that's a very good point. I was remiss in mentioning that, particularly for those of you who weren't here when we initially had the discussion. This is solely inland floodplain. We understand that they are gonna collect some data on the coast, at least the last conversation we had with them, but like you've said, there's
The coastal is still
no
up,
direction on
still
where
up.
that's going, and that may be a conversation for council down the road around, do we wanna do something locally? But, yeah, the intent in the mapping would be for our rivers and overland water bodies.
Yeah. Does anybody have an issue with it? With,
You're hot.
yeah.
Andre had
Oh, sorry, Andre.
I don't mean that in a physical sense, sorry.
Do we have any sense of, through the chair, of course, do we have any sense of what the timing would be for the province's action should we decline?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I think following this, we go back and we get some clarification, or we could seek that before a decision's made. The last I spoke with them, which was sometime earlier this year, their intent was to have the whole province done by it was originally 2026, I think they've now pushed to 2027. The way that it's been going so far is some municipalities had been reaching out for assistance, and so the province started with those folks, and now they're kind of working through whoever's left, and so they reached out to us, so I don't know exactly when Chester would fall in there, but the understanding that I have is that by 2027 the entire province would be done and would have this mapping produced.
So if I can follow on. This is, as you said, very important because we would be able to better predict flood-prone areas, and of course, I would expect that we would have land use controls that would flow from that, so that we could prevent people from building in areas where they shouldn't, and from an emergency perspective, it would be much better to understand where our bad points are gonna be. Also, I presume that we would also have information on, it would give us information on where our water courses are, and at present, we have land use controls that directly relate to water courses that in our bylaws cite the 1 in 10,000 topo maps, which are quite inaccurate in times and create conflicts with landowners when they're trying to develop their land, but there are identified water courses where there actually may not be, and in some cases also water courses where there are none. So at least not on the mapping, that is. So this, for us, this would be important actually to undertake, both to improve our existing bylaws and to create new ones. So I think before we make a decision, it would be good to get an idea from the province when it is that they would undertake it, should they choose to lead it. I think rather than making a decision or recommendation today.
There's no problem waiting for this. Clarissa?
I was just, in your expert opinion, is there any foreseeable cons for them, to allowing them to take this leadership role as opposed to, you know, us being our own consultants and, like, I'm just, without having the physical
nothing-
control.
Yeah, nothing major jumps out to me, and in some ways, it may be that council would prefer some distance from the engagement sessions, as opposed to this being seen as coming directly from us. This would reflect better that it is provincial work. So as far as I'm aware, I don't see any
Yeah.
significant cons. I think
Open
Tara-
dialogue,
That's right.
continue communication, you know,
Exactly,
all through
yeah.
the whole process.
Yeah, and that would be our intent, to be
Yeah.
an active participant in the process once it's started. And also, just to Councilor Vino's points, absolutely, once, that's another piece of the statement of provincial interest around floodplains. There are these 5 identified, but then it says when local knowledge is available of other floodplains, i.e. once we have this mapping, we will then be obligated to develop some regulations and controls around the flood areas. So, as far as I can tell, it's, the timeline should be similar. We can get some clarification on that, but the end result should be the same. And that's, I guess, another piece to add to this. Part of why the province is leading this is to ensure that whether the municipality leads it or whether the province leads it for a particular municipal unit, the data collected will be at a similar standard. So they've actually provided appendices that
Yes.
would go out in the request for proposals to say, we need this type of data to this level of detail, because they don't want to then have a series of maps that you know, are different when you cross a county line or something like
Yes.
that. So that's, again, another reason where I think the end product really should be very similar, whether we lead the process or the province does.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anyone else wish to speak to the issue?
No, you're on.
Well, we can either wait and try to get clarity, or we can just decide to let them do it. What do you want to do?
I believe in listening to our presentation this evening, plus this is very closely related to coastal protection, how this is going to build out, and the concerns that other municipalities, we attended the Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities last week, and there was a big concern from all municipalities about this issue, and that it doesn't need to be 49 or 52 different decisions. It should be the one, and I think for a whole lot of reasons that we have expressed here tonight, it makes sense that we leave this to the province, take it off our plate, give our staff a little opportunity to catch up on our local things that are even more relevant to our communities, in which this is important, but this is something that's going to be, I think, handled by the province, by the feel of it, and there's more of this to come, because a lot of municipalities don't want to be into these positions of trying to separate everybody down the road a little further from somebody else down a little further. So again, I would be supporting, I believe that we let the province handle this and move forward from that point on. Thank you.
Okay, Andre, you wish to speak to that?
Not to be counter to Councillor Bremner's point at all, because actually I have no strong feelings about this one way or the other, but this is we're only strictly talking about the data collection aspect of this. So any actual policy that would flow from the data would come from each unit. So it would be nice if we had homogeneous controls provincially about what's appropriate in flood zones or along the coastline. I doubt very much we'll see that. I do like the aspect of having, because when these maps are created after the data is collected, there will be landowners that will be disenfranchised of their use of those lands. So I do like the idea of them controlling the data for that reason.
Yeah.
But again, my only concern is their timing. Like, should this push this out years, then that could be problematic, I think, because we have some weaknesses in our own existing land use controls that could be improved if we actually had the data now.
Anyone else have any?
Just one other comment, which doesn't completely address what you're speaking of in terms of our issues with our current bylaw. We do also have direction, and Paul will be bringing back, not sure, sometime in the new year, some options, which doesn't totally address what you're saying about where there's a water course or not, but the lakefront overlay relief options. So we had direction from earlier this year to bring back some options to allow It was a result of the Vaughan Lake property where the cottage was moved, but it was still within our 20 meters. So we do have some options coming back that should help that, but there's, yeah, that won't address all of those.
Okay, well, it sounds like let the province do it, but if you can find out if you can get an update on the time frame, get one.
Yep, we'll get back in touch and I'll ask that as we're discussing and presuming that it sounds like there's no significant difference, we'll say thanks, but no thanks, and reach out to us when you have a consultant.
Yeah. Okay, 9.1, expense reimbursement policy.
Yes, so this item is brought forward to council because by January 31st, immediately following a municipal election, council is required to review their expense and hospitality policies and then pass a motion to either re-adopt them or amend one or both and then adopt the amended policies. So we have identified some possible amendment options for council to consider when they review the existing policies. We only have suggested possible amendments to the expense policy. The hospitality policy, we didn't have any suggested amendments, but it is attached for council's review in case you would like to provide direction to amend the hospitality policy. So the first item that staff had put forward is to propose a little bit more parameters around air travel specifically. Right now, the current policy indicates reasonable expenses associated with air travel, and since the policy was in place, air travel has changed a little bit. So in terms of what is considered reasonable may be relative or interpreted differently by different individuals. So what we're suggesting provides a bit more clarity for both those submitting expenses as well as those approving them. So we're suggesting a little bit of clarification around economy or business class fare can be purchased. So right now claimants must obtain the lowest available fare for travel. So normally it would be economy, but it could be if there's other options to purchase it at a lower cost. There also are, when premium economy or business class is not the lowest, booking either fares may be permitted if the total flying time, or if you could take a single flight versus a number of connecting flights, that's in terms of the reasonableness for travel, so that would be allowed as well. Following expenses would be reimbursed if claimed, so now we know that baggage costs now in order to check a bag,
That was just on the news today.
Yes, so this would clarify that you were allowed to check one bag. You can select your seat, which previously that wasn't an additional cost, and now it is. And then also purchase flight cancellation insurance. It is the responsibility of the claimant to obtain credit for any unused refundable tickets. So more and more now, flights are getting canceled and credits are being issued. So this is stating that that would be for municipal use in the future, not for personal use of the claimant. Airport parking fee, park and ride fees are allowed to be claimed as well. And then if claimants want to upgrade anything, that would be at their own personal expense. That is included in the existing policy, so that is not changed. Except for using personal frequent flyer programs. They would not be reimbursed for those programs. Another example in terms of, there's been some discussion or questions around incorporating the EDI lens on the ground transportation piece. So we did try to clarify that a bit here. So essentially, staff or council members living with disabilities that prevent them from driving may be eligible for ongoing transportation support where mileage reimbursement would otherwise be applicable. So we just wanted to suggest some clarification around that. The second one here is to remove policy statements regarding providing compensation to committee members. The reasoning for that is the Nova Scotia's Financial Reporting and Accounting Manual regulations state that a municipality is not supposed to allow expenses to be claimed by anyone other than an employee of the municipality. So committee members are not employees of the municipality. However, recognizing they should be compensated for the time they give up to be part of committees, that is already captured in our policy P58, which is the remuneration of committee members. So we're just suggesting to not be in conflict with any regulations, to remove it from the expense policy,
And
but
leave it where
maintain
it
it.
is.
And yes, it's covered.
Can I, sorry. I'm gonna turn my mic You said it was for employees only. I just want to clarify that it's also reportable individuals, which
Yes.
includes counselors,
Sorry,
that's all.
employees and council.
Yes.
The third one here is, I'm actually suggesting a change to this and removing this item as a recommendation, because in preparing for today's discussion, realized suggesting that we remove continuing education requests from the expense policy and only referring to the HR policy would mean council would not be included, because the HR policy, council does not fall under that. So we're suggesting to leave that as is and removing that recommendation. We do suggest having a separate credit card or P card, procurement card policy. The reasoning for that is the current statements in our policy only relate to travel expenses, and we do use our cards for other expense purchases. So we would recommend having a policy guiding those expense purchases as well.
I use mine when we go to dinner all the time.
And that would be, yeah, and that would be fine too, right? But and that would be covered. I think a couple of important things that came through was when staff, like the executive assistant, would book travel using a corporate card. The current policy indicates that until an expense is submitted and approved, that expense is considered a personal liability of the cardholder. So that's not considering a staff person who is booking on behalf of other individuals. So that's one reason, and the other reason is there are, the FRAM legislation also indicates that we are not supposed to be submitting expenses on behalf of someone other than ourselves. So, oh yeah. Oh, so that is the, I'm gonna have to read it again because I don't know it off by heart. Financial reporting and accounting manual regulations for Nova
Well, yeah, 'cause
Scotia.
lots of times, one of us will pay for all of us that are there. Yeah, I mean, that's just normal.
No, that's fine, yeah. Yeah, so a separate procurement policy would help address that.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt,
go
but how would you do that?
Draft a separate policy addressing
So-
those
so-
items.
Just, maybe I'm still, but, so we went out to dinner at the conference.
Yeah, and I paid for
and now we
everybody
paid.
there.
So how is it gonna
That's
be
normal.
different? Like, how
I've
do
been
you
doing that
propose it?
forever.
Well, technically, under the current expense policy, that's not allowed.
No, okay.
But if we built a new policy
Okay.
around items or scenarios like that, it would be allowed and we'd have. the
Okay,
policy
so we have to
statements
build a
around it.
policy
Yes,
for that?
yes,
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
I've been doing it for 20 years.
The final,
That claim would be
Yes.
under 4 people. I see what you're saying.
Yes.
If 4 people, okay.
Just adds more paperwork. More bureaucracy.
it just ensures we're not conflicting with regulations that we're supposed to be
Yeah.
following. that's
I just
all.
write everybody's name on the receipt and whatever. Anyway, whatever. Make it work right.
So Aaron.
Oh, sorry.
Would it be
Sorry.
more feasible for you, like, for example, if Alan said he wrote our names on the receipt and if 4 or 3 people went out for lunch, would it be more appropriate for us to initial that receipt? Would that be something that could cross-reference a second check or
Well,
something?
we pay for it and get reimbursed.
Well, we certainly can. I'm just saying, like,
Yeah.
if we're gonna change the
That's where
policy
it's
to
going.
include that.
So there's multiple ways we could do it. I think that's why we're suggesting we have a procurement card policy. So we could also look at, with our new procurement cards, they're different. They act a lot like a credit card, but there's more back-end controls for us. So, whereas before we have never given all of the counselors a credit card, the warden would have a credit card. But this way, we could actually issue P cards and sort of limit expenses, so that's one thing. So we just want to make sure that the expense policy covers what the expense policy should cover, and that, like, how we use credit cards is a separate policy, so that's all we're suggesting. The way we do it now, when we do have those expenses, they are charged out to the individual counselors. So even though they may be on one credit card, they're charged out. So we're still following it, it's just the credit card piece of it should be pulled out.
Would that make less work for you, or would that in turn make more work for you moving forward once we get this?
So, I mean,
understand it's a
the
separation
development
of
of the
debt.
policy isn't gonna change too much,
Okay.
either way, yeah. It's, once the policy is developed, it doesn't change, it doesn't create a lot more work for
Thank
us.
you.
Well, if it isn't consistent with what we've been doing, then you should make it consistent with what we were doing. So, been doing it forever.
And the final item is around cell phone use when traveling on vacation and traveling out of the country. So we have cell phone packages, international phone packages that we put on a cell phone. They range anywhere from $50 to $200, depending on the zone that the country falls under. So this would not, we're not suggesting that we limit that amount of reimbursable expense for business travel. This would be when a cell phone is taken out of the country for business purposes. We're suggesting that perhaps we have a maximum reimbursable expense set for that particular circumstance.
I don't know if you're taking it on vacation with you yet.
So we have a few options outlined here for council, so it's suggesting, you know, all or none or some of the recommendations that we can take away. We can amend the policy, bring it back for official adoption by council, and then if you have any feedback as well to give us on the hospitality expense policy that exists, but we have no suggested amendments for that policy. in
Well, the
particular.
changes that you suggested all made sense. It's just to be consistent with practice and, yeah. So does anybody have a problem with any of that? No. So are you looking for a motion for us to get you to amend it with those, based on those recommendations?
Yeah, so it would be option 2, which is direct staff to draft a new expense reimbursement policy and complementary procurement card policy, which would,
Be consistent with the recommendations you made, yeah. Somebody want to move it? Moved by Tom, seconded by? I'll second it. Sharon, discussion? All those in favor? Opposed, motion's carried. 9.2, water supply and septic system upgrades, infrastructure and operations.
Good evening, everyone. This is my first time addressing new councillors and first time in the evening. Oh, have I turned it off? Okay, all right. Clearly new. All right. So yes, so this is, if you recall, council gave direction to develop a revised program that would take our existing water supply upgrade lending program and expand that. So expand both the scope of that program and also add septic system upgrades to it as well. So what we have before us is exactly that. So where am I going? So in addition to the draft bylaw, there is, just in case people have, in case councillors have questions about some of the minutiae of it, there's an accompanying document which will be the agreement, and that will have a lot of sort of further details about some processes and stuff that is not captured in the bylaw. But the bylaw itself, we want to try and keep that at a level that provides an overarching sort of sense of it and direction, and then obviously the key things such as the financing terms. So, as noted, just as a little bit of context, there are two existing programs that are authorized under the same section of the MGA, that's Section 81A. That's our, as I said, the water supply upgrade lending program that is still currently in effect. And then also the recently amended Clean Energy Financing Program, that's our PACE program, which stands for Property Assessed Clean Energy. What I'm going to sort of run through here is just what this draft bylaw that's before you does, and then we've got to get into some points for discussion with specific questions for council's direction. So just briefly, and if I run through this too quickly, by all means stop. Any questions anytime. So on page 3, section 1 outlines how the bylaw, the draft bylaw 156, Water Supply and Septic System Upgrade Program, meets the MGI requirements. So there's a table there on page 3 with the requisite sections of the MGA and the sections in the bylaw that satisfy those requirements. I should also add that this bylaw has gone through legal review, so we've satisfied, Sam appears to be happy with those. Page 4, just outline how we've, in this draft, we've incorporated council's previous direction. So this is in respect to council's direction of a maximum eligible amount of financing available as being $30,000. So that's identified in sections 2.07 and 9.01.1 in the bylaw. Similarly, another point that council brought up was in respect to what happens if there's someone wishing to apply for septic system financing and they're already within an existing wastewater service boundary. So we have a section there that stipulates that council has the right to approve a request for a qualifying property owner for such an upgrade within existing municipal wastewater system service boundary. What we will include in the agreement is a little bit of sort of process about how that, how to address that eventuality. Question or point 3 on page 4. So how this existing bylaw or this new bylaw builds on the existing program scope. So the current, sorry, all these terms. The current water supply lending program. It builds off of that, although there is if you were to compare the two, it's completely rewritten. The content is essentially the same in terms of how that works. However, so obviously we've added the additional scope of work associated with septic system upgrades and that procedure around that. So those sections are listed and also highlighted in the draft bylaw. And we've also broadened the definition of what constitutes a water supply upgrade in section 2.13. So now that includes water treatment and filtration equipment to address water quality, not just quantity, and then as well as fog harvesting systems, grey water systems for further providing options for reducing, the consumption of potable water available. Just gonna take a sip of water. So number 4, alignment with PACE program. This was not a direction of council, it's a suggestion from staff, so this needs council's approval, obviously. So the amended PACE bylaw that was approved by council in June this year provided new financing terms. And so what Tim, the Director of Finance, and I discussed was it makes sense to make these programs align. So as a result, what we're proposing is that this new program would also have a 3% interest rate and have a 15-year repayment period, which would therefore align with PACE. So that's where it's at, okay? So one of the options before you is you can simply approve this bylaw as is, and we're off to the races, okay? Points for discussion, though, for further things. So this begins on page 5. This is the point I just brought up about the financing terms for this new program. So basically, as I suggested, our staff's recommendation is to align this new program with the PACE program financing terms. For your context, there are 2 other similar combined programs. Well, there's actually a third, but it's not been rolled out yet. I think it's West Hants is going to also have a similar combined program, but it's not rolled out yet. So HRM and Victoria County do have a combined water and septic program, and how those work is there in summary on page 5. The only other point I will make too, in terms of the financial lens around this program, is that both HRM and Victoria charge an administration fee for their programs. We at no point as council nor has staff recommending that we do the same. Our PACE program, in case this comes up as a point of comparison, does require an administration fee, but that's because it's run by a third-party organization, the Clean Foundation.
So Jonathan, I didn't look, but what does HRM charge for their interest rate? Does it say, I didn't?
Their interest?
Yeah.
HRM's interest is prime rate of their banker plus 2 percentage points.
Plus 2.
Yeah, so. Yeah.
No. What's that?
Whereas
Oh,
Victoria,
yeah,
so
yeah.
Victoria is a flat 2%. Yeah. Okay. Oh, sorry, no, my mistake. Is also prime plus 2%. Yeah, my mistake. Yeah. And what we currently do with the existing water supply program is it's our Scotiabank prime rate at the time of signing the agreement, so whatever it might be. And I'm not sure what it is right now, but the last time Tim and I talked, I think it was just over 7%. So that's how, yeah. So, so here's your first question then, here's your first decision point on this. What would you like to do? Would you like to apply the current lending program terms? So that's 10 years repayment terms, Scotiabank prime interest rate? Or do you want to align with PACE program, 15-year repayment terms, 3% interest rate? And go
What
from
can we
there?
afford?
We can do either. Yeah. So, and this is built into the motion to, that's before you as well. So, Tim's analysis is this is not an issue. So, we can readily accommodate that.
Well, I mean, for poor people, 15 years is cheaper for them.
Well, and that's the point. I mean, it's critical in the sense that when, and that's in respect to the PACE program, when we made that amendment to the PACE program, one of the driving points for that was that repayment period of 10 years versus the now 15 was a bit of a barrier. So it was turning people away in terms of that cost. So it's about sort of removing a barrier to access to the program.
Tara?
No, just on the I think the discussion that I've had with the Director of Finance is that, you know, we'll keep an eye on this and report back to council on uptake and usage, and if it becomes an issue that we're getting so many applications that it's
difference.
becoming a problem, then we'll come back and report on
That's
that.
exactly,
We'll
yeah,
just need to
that's
review
exactly
what's going
it.
in. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's gotta fit within our budget framework. Sharon, so.
Thank you. I know we're getting into this in the second part, but for me, I like the fact that if we can afford to do it, allow it for 3% is fantastic for those that really need it. But I would like it only to be on, I think, residential, their family home, not to extend it to, certainly to cottages or second residence. It's just for their initial home. That's what I would prefer.
Okay. Okay, so we'll get to that in 1 second.
Yeah.
But that's an excellent point. So where do people stand on the financing terms? What would you like?
15 years, I mean, poor people are who need it, not people with all kinds of money.
So you're looking for a motion? Okay,
Yeah, well, I mean, no, because we want to approve the whole thing as
okay,
amended.
thank you.
Yeah, so the intent would be as we go through and your recommendation is whatever on each of these points, I'll make a note of that, and then the motion will be sort of to amend the draft bylaw following council's direction on these
Well, it
points.
sounds like 15 years is consistent at the moment. So what's the next question we have to decide on?
So 15 years and 3%?
Yeah,
All right.
Thinking, the only,
oh, sorry.
the only concern I have is let's say you're putting new windows or whatever in your home, put in a PACE program, the lifetime of those upgrades is fairly long. So usually you would expect performance of 25 years plus. Septic systems, you hope that they'll last 10, 20 plus years or whatever, but there are no guarantees that it'll last any period of time beyond 2 years, actually. There's no industry guarantee that extends beyond 2 years. So, because there's so many factors that can affect the lifetime of a on-site sewage system. So, it would be a big problem if they were 11 years into payments with 4 remaining and then there was a malfunction. That's the only drawback I see to extending the financing out over a long period of time. It'd be like financing a car over 10 years. You hope it'll make it 10 years, but if it blows up after 7 and you still have 3 years of payments, that's a big problem.
I never even thought of that, to tell you the truth. Yeah.
I do respect your concerns, and I think we're looking at that in every program we have, because when you look at solar panels, they only, they're invested for so long, and then if something happens in that period of time, you're right back with a handful. And hopefully the engineers, wink, wink, can get good things out on the table, and that will give us the opportunity to give people as much comfort as we can give them. And I think this is a balance of opportunity for them to have an option that plays the same field.
On that note, one other concern that was brought up in discussion too was around well drilling. And So the risk always in respect to well drilling is that you commit to doing it but the well is not viable. It's unsuccessful. You still have to you still have the charge.
Yeah.
But the rationale, I guess, the benefit of having a financing program with favorable terms like this would be you had to go ahead and do it anyway. But at least now it's a failed well, yes, you're still on the hook for it, but now you've got a more manageable repayment term.
At least you had the money to attempt to do it.
There's risk, but you're absolutely right, there's risk.
I feel like 10 years gives enough buffer. Typical solar installation, I think typical industry guarantees would be like 25 years on those. Windows, you'd expect to get 20, 25 years, no problem. So we're financing up to 15 years. That allows some opportunity for premature failures and not be on the hook for financing. 10 years, in my simple calculations, put payments at, even for expensive septic systems, at sort of within reach numbers. And I don't know, to me, I'm all for making it accessible to most, but we don't want to have a premature failure and then you're in a bad situation where people are making payments on something that's already toast.
Doesn't function. Anyone else comments on that particular issue?
It's not a hill for me to die on, I just, my
Yeah.
2 cents
Yeah.
worth.
Well,
I mean, you could make it 10 years and 3%, that is possible.
Well, you felt that was detrimental to the program, people found, from your experience.
Well,
I talked to one person that said that to me that used the program.
Yeah, well, and it was a particular advantage for the PACE program because the amount is a lot more. So it stretches that over. So it's 6 of one, half a dozen the other.
So like you're at 3%, is 3% total or above prime?
It's 3% total.
So 3% on the maximum outlay on a septic system is $289 a month. That's for a big ticket item like that, and most wouldn't be the full 30,000. Most would be maybe 2/3 of that. So it seems like $200 a month is within reach. Maybe not, but it's. And that's at 10 years. That's at 10 years.
At 3%.
At 3%.
so are we gonna go with 10 or 15? I mean, either one is better than what they have at the moment.
I have no problem changing it to 10.
Yeah.
If we find that it's not working,
Yeah.
and we have a lot of concerns from people
Then we'll have to
wanting to
reconsider.
access the program, we'll have to change it.
Yeah, and I think in general too, that's our, because we are trying something a little new for us. So, and I think it's going to be really important to have that ongoing updates and monitoring, just to sort of check in and to see how it's going, for sure.
Clarissa?
So just an open dialogue right now. So Councilor Church said we're changing. We're not changing, we're just.
Talking about it.
It's just the verbal debate. Okay. I was just making sure that nothing was already drafted. This is brand new off the table. Okay. I'm just trying to catch up being a new
Yeah,
council.
no, it's
That's
all
great.
good.
Yeah, I think 10 years at 3% is adequate. I think it's marginable. I think it makes some sense as far as the responsibilities on our end as well, and I'm gonna vote for that. Thank you.
Okay, so we're sticking with 10%, 10 years at the moment. So what's your next one you want an answer
So
to?
10 years, 3%. So the next 10, 3, okay.
Yeah. In a
Second
minute.
point
We-
is what Councillor Church already brought up, was the qualifying property eligibility. So this centers around what we have currently in the current water supply lending program. Eligible property is an existing, already developed, owner-occupied single unit or 2-unit residential property, or a building owned by a not-for-profit organization located within the municipality, blah, blah, blah. So the Halifax, again, just as a point of comparison, HRM, owner-occupied single unit, the same, and thus they restrict residential properties such as cottages and so on. in an effort to sort of manage their program commitment in terms of the viability of it, in terms of the cost, and because of the greater sort of housing stock that they have. HRM also stipulates that rented or leased properties are not eligible, saying that it's the owner who should sort of be investing in that directly. So what we currently have in this draft is, no, wait, sorry, now I'm losing track of my own thoughts here. So yeah, so what we have in this draft right now is keeping it as, no, so right now we've removed that owner-occupied piece. So it's simply, it's a single unit or 2-unit residential property. So it could be a second home right now in this new draft here. So I guess my point, I apologize for making this unnecessarily complicated. So should the municipality then restrict this to owner-occupied residential property, or open it up so that it could be, as I say, a leased or rented property or a recreational property, like a cottage or whatnot? That is the fundamental question. Sorry.
You're good.
I'm good. I feel it should be just their occupied residence. I feel that if, they have a second property or a cottage, that this is a program about affordability, and we should limit it to single residential occupied, in my opinion.
It should still apply to not-for-profits though, shouldn't it?
We'll get to that
Well,
we'll get
that's separate maybe,
Okay.
but
It is separate, yeah, I would say.
What do people, oh, sorry, Clarissa.
So single occupied, as Mr. Church said, it could be a single mom, single dad raising 2 children.
Yeah.
And they're renting, so the point being that if that is their dwelling, if you're talking primary residence only, you're talking that the only person that gets this reward is a primary resident. And so then the owner of the building would have to then supply water to his tenants. Am I clear?
Well, right now, the language reads sort of owner occupied. So that would be what we would have to adjust. So,
Okay.
no, sorry, done it again. In this draft, it is just simply residential property, so it's open.
Oh.
Right. So, but what's on the table is whether to make it owner occupied residential property.
Okay.
So,
Primary resident owner, okay.
That's
thank you.
right.
I'm thinking like the post office.
Yeah, no.
Primary resident. Thank you, okay.
have I
Abdallah?
completely muddied the waters, or are we good?
Oh, Andre first, and then, well, Abdallah was the green one, so that's, okay.
I like the definition that Victoria County has of owner-occupied single or 2-unit residential property. It's easy to envision in today's society requires more multi-unit buildings, so we often have situations where people are caring for
Rent
elderly
half of it.
parents and they're in an in-law suite,
Yes, that's correct, yeah.
or young families that are getting their start in a new unit that they put on a family home. That's a very common occurrence. So, I feel like those are properties that I feel like should be supported by this program. I don't see everything as a big money grab opportunity.
No,
from a
the owner
landlord.
still owns it, and they're still living in it.
They're there. They may
Yeah.
have a secondary unit that's used for
Yeah.
who knows what purpose. But
Oh,
that's
yeah,
really
lots of
not
people
really
have their
relevant.
family members in half of their house and stuff. Della?
Yeah, just Andre's a landlord, so if he's got a tenant and Andre doesn't have water, I can't see the tenant applying for that. It would have to be the landlord. Well, what would be the incentive for the tenant? They don't own the building.
No,
No, exactly.
Yeah.
So
They can't.
Andre would say, sure, go ahead, knock yourself out.
No, the tenant can't.
No, so it should be, yeah.
It has to be the owner.
It has
It's
to
just
be the
whether or
owner.
not they're allowed to rent half of their house or something.
So are you saying that it's, you're gonna apply, it was just discussion, but like a cottage as well?
No, so that's
So,
the,
and that, okay, so
Yeah.
if it's no, how would you monitor that? If someone applied, I mean, would you physically go up and check the civic address, check if they're living there? How would that work, do you think?
well, okay, so if that would be part of the process outlined in the agreement in terms of how that property is registered. So it has to be, it's gotta be a tax-paying resident,
Okay.
so as the owner of that property. So that's how that would how that would apply.
So I guess for an example, if my house in Western Shore and I had a cottage in New Ross. And I want to put it in New Ross. That's not my primary home.
Right.
So I wouldn't qualify. But what I'm saying is, how would you police that, or what's that? Yeah, how would you know?
Yeah, that's a good question. I
Yeah,
would
how
have to
would you
look
know?
into that and get back to you,
Yeah,
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Gina?
Sorry, I know we're getting too far in the weeds on this, but I see it as very similar to when people are applying through Department of Housing, Municipal Affairs, out of the Middleton office, for example, that covers our area. And I think we all do this, but I help at least one resident a week, often more, fill out those application forms. And they have those within that application form, so they're signing off on it. And there's a manner, obviously based on the PID, and they're affirming where they're living and so on. So I see it no different, and it's a very seamless application, if you will. Yeah, yeah.
Well, yeah,
It can
Well,
be checked, it
yeah,
can be
they have
checked.
to claim
can be
that it
checked.
is their permanent residence. I mean,
The agreement becomes a legal document in and of itself. Right. Yeah.
That's how you
So I just want to, I feel like we may have veered off a little bit here. So we're talking about the distinction between, yes, but I think everybody agrees, residential property, yes.
Yes.
Everybody, what I want to ensure is that should it be, if that's a residential property, it's simply the property you live in, your primary residence. So it's in that you own it and you are the primary resident of it. That's what we're trying to
But
get
that
at.
seems to be where we're at.
Is that where we're at?
Yeah,
Is that where we're at?
yeah, but
And
you-
just for clarity, single or two-unit, it's okay.
well, it looks like 2 units as long as it's occupied by the owner.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Yeah.
All right, I think I've got that clear. Owner occupied, single, 2.
Yeah. Okay.
Perfect.
Next
All right.
question.
Thank you for your patience as we work through this. The other is in respect to not-for-profit. So we, I initially had a question as to whether, because the MGA in this section sort of stipulates property as being private property. So a property owned by a not-for-profit organization certainly qualifies. So right now, the current water lending program does include not-for-profit organizations.
Oh, yeah.
So my question is essentially, to cut to the chase, actually there's a wrinkle in this too. So the PACE program does not. The PACE program is purely residential properties, and that's it. So my question to council is twofold, should we allow this program, the water supply and septic system program, to be open to buildings owned by not-for-profit organizations?
Does the water one apply to it now?
Yes.
I
Okay,
would say for consistency.
Yeah.
okay, we can apply that.
Well,
And
yeah.
then similarly, the PACE program as well. We have had inquiry from the community as to whether a not-for-profit building could apply for accessing funding for financing for solar panels.
But they can't do it through the PACE program, you're
And
telling
right now,
me.
there's a restriction, so we would have to amend the PACE program to allow that. So that's why, again, we want to ensure alignment one way or the other. And that's not an issue in respect to, again, it's certainly doable. And I checked in with Clean Foundation. It's doable from their perspective too. It would change things slightly, because the way in which the PACE program, the focus of the PACE program is that there are payback incentives through the Home Energy Assessment Program, and that's based on meeting a certain one-to-one debt savings ratio for residential properties. That wouldn't work for a larger building, for a not-for-profit organization. So it's not the same, but it still work. They would still provide that expertise and recommendations on sort of sort of energy efficient retrofits to the building in question. And then they would have to sort of look at some administrative process in terms of split invoicing to address what would likely be a cost above and beyond the current PACE maximum. So it's, but from their perspective, from Clean Foundation's perspective, it's certainly doable. It would just be tweaked slightly different for those cases.
For the not-for-profits, yeah. Yeah, Tina?
Oh, sorry.
I'm in full agreement with the opening the envelope to
Okay.
include this.
Okay.
Just me, though.
Oh, not-for-profits, yeah, they, yeah. Okay, so we're opening up for not-for-profits.
Okay, for both programs, all
Yeah.
right. Excellent. So one final point on this then comes back to the financing piece. So we currently have, this is on page 9 of the report, the financial reserves allocation. There is currently a $2.4 million reserve allocation by motion for use by the PACE programmers alone. And that motion is copied in the document here. Again, through discussion with our Director of Finance, we've crunched the numbers, and there's no concerns in respect to the capacity of the program to be able to, that same allocation, 2.4, with the change in financing terms, to be able to accommodate applications through both the water supply and septic system program and the PACE program.
Because we haven't been using it in,
Yeah, I mean, the current files that are active are listed in the report, so there's still plenty of capacity there.
yeah.
But again, to speak to the point that Tara raised earlier, we would obviously constantly monitor this. So if
Sure.
it looks like we were tapping out, then we would bring,
Yeah,
then we
and then
make
we'd
some
have to
adjustments.
decide whether to up it or not, yeah.
Yeah.
Makes perfect sense.
So that proposed motion is, so that's essentially it, is basically, we have a draft revised motion, it's essentially the same, we're just adding the
Changes that we
program.
just made.
Yeah.
Does somebody want to move that we recommend the changes we just made?
So moved.
Okay, so, let me be absolutely clear here, all right. So there's two, I will bring back a revised draft water supply and septic system bylaw
With the changes we've made?
with the changes you made, an amended PACE program bylaw with
Yeah.
the changes you made, and also I need the specific motion for the allocation of reserves. That also needs to be part of the minutes. That's gonna be, we also, Pam, need to rescind the previous motion. How does that work? Okay. So, yes, we need a motion then. Sorry, people.
Yeah, Sharon?
Just comment on the nonprofit, since we're going to open it up to that, whether we're going to have a lien on the property, or whether we're
sorry.
asking board members to do a personal guarantee, which I think would be very difficult. to
Be on the
ask.
property, same as it is in everything else.
Thank you, Councillor Church. Yes, that's an excellent point, and I omitted that. That is an important part, is the security on the property, on the loan, on the finance.
That's how we do it. yeah.
So it's the options are, yes, a lien on the property, on the not-for-profit building, or legal suggested you could also have two board members make that commitment to
Which
sort of
nobody's
pay.
gonna do.
Just put it on the property, that's what we do with everything else.
Okay,
Andre?
So the not-for-profit will have to own the property.
yes.
Okay, good. One final comment from me. In your report, you mentioned that section 3.02 stipulates that the qualifying property must be outside an existing municipal service area, and then saying that we can, upon request. I'm not sure what that section is for, what the purpose of it is. I believe that I think that the onsite sewage regulations prohibit onsite sewage within a service boundary, except when it has to be only by special approval of the department, in which case, then they would be obviously in a situation where they would have no other choice, so it may be redundant to ask for that.
Okay. Yeah, this was, that's included as per council direction when we were initially discussing the parameters of that.
Yeah,
But if it's a redundant clause, we can.
you
we
can just check that with environment, but I believe that environment won't allow one within the service boundary unless there's basically no other. I think that they require, if you're within 30 meters of a municipal infrastructure, you're required to hook up unless by special application it's approved.
Okay.
That's interesting, because I know Monty was gonna build next to me, and he said he was gonna put septic in. I mean, I don't know, would that, I mean, you're in the business, you would know, so.
You're the last house in the service boundary.
I am? Oh, okay, I knew I was close, okay.
know all that.
Yeah, good. I knew I could You're in that business, that's,
So, in that draft amended bylaw, I will sort of verify exactly what's
that's on.
what's possible around that clause. Thank you, councillor Vino, on that one.
Okay, so we don't really have a motion. We had a mover, no seconder. So maybe if you just withdraw that, so we,
All right, yeah.
yeah, so we,
withdraw my motion.
Okay.
so we want a motion to rescind what's current?
Yeah,
that
so
how
it's
we would
motion
start?
motion two, let me start again. A motion to rescind motion 2023-234.
Somebody move it.
I'll move that.
Seconder, discussion, all those in favor? Opposed? Next motion we need
A
is.
motion for, a new motion for the allocation of reserves. So a committee of the whole recommend to council to allocate, and this is on page 11 of the
Yeah,
report.
it's 2.3.
2.4 million,
Uh-oh.
and then all of the rest.
Yeah.
That clause.
Somebody want to move that one? That's what we already have on the books. And
Okay.
so did you second it? Yes, seconded by Clarissa?
And then the only other.
Discussion,
Oh.
all those in favor? Opposed, motion's carried. And now a motion to adopt the new,
So to bring back,
Direction is done.
yeah, directions to staff to bring back an amended water supply and septic system upgrades program bylaw and an amended PACE program bylaw.
based on the recommendations we made here today.
Thank you.
Seconder. Seconded. Moved by Tom, seconded by Sharon. Discussion, all those in favor? Opposed, motion's carried. That's it for you?
That's that one.
We're having a 10-minute break.
Okay, all right.
We're live. We'll call the meeting back to order. We're on 10.1.
So good evening, Council. Once again. So this one is a discussion item.
Yeah.
So we've been approached by the Fulcher Foundation to see if we could find a use for their $1 million endowment fund. So this is if you recall, the Fulcher Foundation is behind the LaHave River Straight Pipe project in Modal. And so that project is complete. So now they're looking for a way in which they could use that $1 million endowment for a similar financing program. So just in case you don't know how that works, the one in Modal, the LaHave project, it was a sort of through the auspices of a wastewater management district, and it provided financing to residents to offset the costs of the design and installation of on-site systems. And then obviously, because it's financing, they paid that back. Now, it was at a reduced rate because Modal used that program, that endowment, to leverage funding from at least the federal government, I think the provincial government as well. So it becomes a cost-effective way to address an immediate on-site service delivery need, an environmental impact need, and so on. So what we have in this report is some options for some possible programs that we could use. Apply that endowment to, if council so wishes. So we're just looking for council's input. There are 4 options before you. You may have other ideas, but it's about one of the things that we would have to verify and look at more closely is just exactly how that endowment might work in respect to both the Fulcher Foundation's expectations and their restrictions around the use of the funds, and also what we can do through the MGA.
Yeah.
So
I'm just going to give, Donnie Dan came in and asked me, and this was months and months ago now, whether or not we wanted to take advantage of this money. And in his original discussion, it was all about getting straight pipes out of the lakes and the rivers and the whatever, you know, and fixing that kind of a problem. But I think there's a little flexibility into it, but now months and months have gone by, and last week, his board had a meeting, and he wanted me to give him an answer on whether we wanted it or didn't want it, or we're going to use it or weren't going to use it, and I couldn't tell him at that time. So I think it's still available to us, but I'm not 100% certain it's still available to us at this moment in time. He hasn't called and said, you're out, or anything like that, but I know that they've been looking for an update from us now for several months, and for whatever, we just didn't have. It just didn't make it to the top of the list.
Okay.
Now, I can't remember my full understanding of how it worked, but we get to keep the money. Yeah. So if they give us $1 million or $500,000, we can lend it out at an interest rate that they establish, I think, to people to fix this problem. And then when they pay us back, we get to keep the money.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. That was not my, okay, but this
That's
just,
my recollection of how that worked, yeah.
So my understanding is that it's a fund that they would provide to us, and what they would like to see is that we loan that money out to individuals to do whichever project it is, if that's septic systems or whatever other project. But they would like the project to have a greater community benefit. So not only does it benefit the person who is
Individual,
doing the project themselves on their property, but then it has this greater community benefit. So if you look at the example that they did in Modal, yes, the individuals used the money to put a septic system on their own property. The benefit was cleaning up the LaHave River for the community. So they would like to see projects that have that dual purpose.
Exactly, and that's, I'm sorry, I know, you go.
Sorry,
Terry.
and
Sorry,
then,
that's
it is correct that they, whatever gets paid back, it would self-sustain the fund, and you
right.
could continue doing it. And once the initial round of that project is done, we could look at doing another similar type of project, and that's what Modal has done. So it's not the same $1 million that Modal
Okay.
used.
I misunderstood.
They also, I think, have recycled the program and have put it into a new program. So this is another pot of money that they have that they would make available to do projects in our community. So they would like us to identify potential projects or a potential project if we are interested in doing that. And then that's the idea, is that it would become a self-sustaining.
And the problem we had is over there, they knew that they had a whole bunch going to the river. And I said, well, Donnie, like, I know we do have ones that are going out into the harbor, and I know we do have ones that are going into the river, but we don't have any specific data or,
Yeah.
or anything like that on it, and, you know, because, I mean, we just didn't.
And, yeah, and so just to sort of, you know, just to keep in mind, to illustrate Tara's point, the Fulcher Foundation's mandate is to improve the quality of life in the province through inclusiveness and the development of rural economic growth and sustainability. So it's a broad mandate, but it speaks to the point that Tara was just making, absolutely. So those points, this is good, and this just illustrates the fact, by the way, that, again, what we're looking for is any of these ideas or other ideas tweak council's interest, and then we can pursue an AC if it's still available and get further details just exactly how this might work. So the first one is, we could apply that money to what we just discussed, the water supply and septic system upgrades loan program. So we could just sort of use that as part of that allocation, and then that would free up $1 million of the
Of our
allocation
own
we've already
money.
made.
Yeah.
So that's straightforward, that's one. The other, and related, is basically do something similar, as the warden just mentioned, to the LaHave project, and develop a wastewater management district and then finance some renewal through that. The big initial challenge, of course, is identifying an area. So the whole point of a wastewater management district is, again, it's a tool allowed through the MGA that would basically require us to create a bylaw that would define what this area is that we're addressing. So this would then that would enable, or rather empower, the municipality to basically ask residents to sort of demonstrate they have an effective on-site septic system. So that would mean inspection on our part, determining what the issue is, and then going from there, and then enforcing basically that kind of upgrade of equipment. Again, following the same LaHave model.
Yeah,
So that's one.
kind of why we didn't have the data on it, because we didn't really necessarily want to go out and do that inspection on everybody's house, because once we found out it was going directly into the harbor, we'd have had to shut them down, you know, like, or somebody would have.
I guess when I read the report, the first thing that came in my mind was Gold River.
Yeah.
So if we were to go down the road to, like LaHave, they did in LaHave River, so would you actually ask the property owners, you know, they're not gonna willingly tell you that they're dumping sewer into the river, so how would you approach that? I don't know, yeah.
Yeah, you would have to basically, the property owners would have to demonstrate they have an effective, functioning on-site septic system. What that means, I don't know. That would be getting into the weeds in that.
But what I'm saying, Jonathan, is, from what I understand, from what they're saying, they want that money used for betterment of, I would think they would like it for the betterment of the whole community, not just the property owner.
Well-
So if the property owner doesn't have a sewer, and, you know, it's a straight pipe going into the river.
Yeah.
So we'd have to make it like, you know, this is a program that's available, and if you're, you know, you won't be held responsible for previous, because I'm sure they didn't do to the people in LaHave River. They must have had a problem there.
Yeah.
Or they just said, no, what's done is done, we'll start from scratch, and you can apply to have this done.
Yeah.
We could use that model.
We would definitely look, if this is the route we went, we would definitely have to look.
Well,
we would follow
that's
that
the route I'd
same
like to
model. The trick is again, because this isn't so much based on a sort of one-to-one sort of property transaction. This is basically looking at an area. So it's identifying that there is a common problem within a sort of defined area. Then you could apply that wastewater management district to.
But how are you gonna know that?
That's the challenge. We have had, like, there were studies. There's a study in 1994 which was provincial. There's a 2006 study which was municipal, and we also did a survey in 2001 focused on that same area as Gold River area properties and their septic.
Oh, so what did the survey questions ask?
Well, according to a report I read based on the 2006 study. That study indicated that 60 to 170 properties exhibited some form of deficiency, either malfunctioning or non-existent systems.
Well, there you go. That's,
right.
So that's clear evidence that would be a wastewater area.
Right.
In my eyes.
Yeah, but it requires political will. because this would be enforcing it.
Now, you'd be forcing them to do.
Yeah, exactly, so,
But, so you're gonna force them,
I'm not gonna.
no, but so what you're saying is that if we have to force them to work into this program.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing, and that's why it's a special program. So it's, again, it would be under the auspices of the wastewater management district. It's a tool that's established by the NGA. Cape Breton Regional Municipality used it to address some critical.
Well, I think we have
on-site
to, I think the first thing we have to do is find out how they manage that part of it.
Yep.
Through LaHave, like someone that was putting their straight pipe into the river and go saying, you have to do this.
Oh, I
Or
agree.
how did that work?
Yeah, and again, I think the first step would be just determining what council's interest,
Well, that's
level
my
of
interest.
interest
I
is.
don't know what
And so if
anybody
there
else
is interest to pursue that, then
Oh,
we would
it's
delve
interest on my part,
into
yeah.
greater detail.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Andre.
It almost always,
You're hot.
yeah, I know something about this. It almost always starts with some sort of anecdotal information on, you know, old studies or like just local knowledge that there's a problem.
Yeah.
Like what we feel may be the problem in Gold River, and then it's required that you have to basically create the wastewater management district at wherever the geographic boundaries are around the problem that you think will gather everybody up. Once you have that in place, then you have the authority to require a demonstration or carry out investigations on the property. Because that legislation, that wastewater management district will give you the authority to do so. And once you've identified, either by people self-identifying or through your investigation, all of the problem ones, then you have to basically hire a project manager of some sort, maybe temporarily or whatever, part-time, for a smaller site, less area like Gold River. And then they would manage the consultant. You'd have to hire a consultant to do the design of all of the various systems that would be required to treat the sewage. And then you'd have to do the construction. The construction would be tendered through the municipal, through our normal procurement methods. And the only way that you can, that this can work with other layers of funding is if you do it through this wastewater management district, because then in theory, the infrastructure is actually owned by the municipality for a period of time, which is kind of weird because you're on private lands, but then in theory, you own their septic system for like 7 years, I think was the last one that was done in LaHave. So then the clock starts ticking and the municipality then has to maintain the system and keep it going for the 7 years, and after that, there's a handover of that back to the owner. And so that's the only way to qualify for any other fundings beyond this endowment fund is because they won't fund private infrastructure. It has to be owned by a government. So that's sort of the steps you have to go through, and it takes a real commitment, because the build-up to that wastewater management district is a whole lot of engagement with the public in the affected areas, and you have to be really strong-willed to want to go through that before you can actually undertake the work of doing it.
Yeah, we could ask them whether or not they would allow us to help fund the program that we just voted on to put in place, though. Mm-hmm. Now, will they say yes or no? But Donnie has told me that they're willing to be reasonably flexible, so. It's just the question was, does council want us to go out and try to come up with something that works for us, or don't they? Yeah.
There are a couple other ideas, but they're murkier as to how they would work. So there is an option, sort of a living shoreline project, whether we could help property owners sort of shore up shorelines with a sort of through the nature-based solutions model, rather than sort of hard infrastructure. Yeah. But how that would look, I don't know, and how that would work within the constraints of the Municipal Government Act, I also don't know. So that would require some further investigation. There's also the fourth one is a stormwater retention diversion, and again, through rain gardens, bioswales, where you can sort of you can capture and retain that runoff so that it is sort of kept in the water table, which would help address.
Well, that's probably something that they would fund.
Yeah, but that's, now, I don't know how that would fly in respect to both the mechanisms from the endowment, but also in respect to the MGA. We would have to have a closer look, but I do know that in 2019-20, Kings, Annapolis, Digby, Yarmouth, Shelburne, Lunenburg, and Queens, they developed this whole project around stormwater retention. And so it was basically, they did an assessment with property owners and came up with solutions and then went from there. Now, again, if there's interest there from council, we would have to do some further research just to determine how that worked and then how the Fulcher Foundation endowment may be applied or not to that.
Tom?
Thank you, Warden Weber. To the rest of the table, I feel if we don't want $1 million, we just give it up, and if we try it and we see it work something, there's lots of areas we can apply it to and many uses for municipality-wide and specific causes as maybe Gold River, but the question for me is, do we just want to give up $1 million if it's on the table for us to use and rebuild? I don't think that's something we should just wave off. I think we have to at least look at it and explore it. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that, I don't know for certain, but I mean, I know that when I was speaking with Donnie, that I mean, I brought up possible solar gardens and all kinds of different things because I didn't think we were in a position to deal with it quite the same way that they did over in the Lehigh River, you know. So that program that we just put in place, we may be able to use their money for that. Yeah. Well, I don't know it. I just know that he was open to suggestions.
The only commentary I have is that, you know, we were talking about this anecdotal idea of that there could be a problem in Gold River, but the only sort of real study that we have is 20 years old, and I know that I've personally been involved in solving many of those in the last 15 years. So, you know, if it is something that we want to entertain before we made any, I mean, we can always say, sure, we're interested, but I don't know that we'd go beyond that without at least just sending a survey to all the property owners, just asking some 5 general questions like, do you have a septic system? You know, what is its condition? Would you be interested in, you know, if there were funds available, would you be interested in fixing it or whatever, you know, some sort of questions that sort of defines the actual scope of the problem. Because there may not actually be that many left, who knows?
Well, you would have that knowledge being in your business, right? That's good.
Well, we've done some, but,
Okay.
Yeah.
but, you know, but this is a big undertaking. If there's something you want to do, is something this council wants to do, it's a big undertaking. We've been involved with every single one of them in the province. I know what this is. It's not small.
Oh, somebody.
Yeah, well, you know, I mean, this was important, but now that you said that, my little pea brain here, what I'd like to bring forward at some point, and I spoke to Fred about it, just, you know, we're doing the new treatment plant in Chester Basin. And I'd like to see in the future that, and we have it in Western Shore, I'd like to see a continuation in that. So that would encompass Gold River as well. So, I mean, that's down the line. I mean, you know, you have to do it, but that would be my, in a strategic plan for us, for me, and then you'd have a continuous service area of 8 mile, 7 kilometer. Anyway. Yeah, you can speak.
Tara?
Just to help move the discussion along, maybe, if there's interest in, because it would be staff resources for this, and, you know, we haven't had the priority setting session yet and all of that kind of stuff. But if there's interest in exploring one of these projects, and council would like us to use staff resources and explore that with the Fulcher Foundation, we can do that. The program that you just approved, so sort of that first option, the water supply and septic upgrade loan program, it might qualify, but I don't know that there's as strong an argument there for the broader community benefit as there is with the other project. However, if you combined the water supply lending program with the last project there, the stormwater retention and diversion, to sort of build out that
And
idea of
even the
rain
solar
gardens and
piece,
stuff.
because
and
they
the solar
weren't
piece.
completely,
Yeah.
because that's saving the world, Don.
Then we could explore those options with the directors and see if there's a project that kind of resonates with them. And then we could bring back some more information to council on their feedback, if that works.
Well, it does for me, but I. Okay, that's what we're gonna do.
So it was looking at the water supply in combination with the
With
water
the-
as well piece, yeah,
Yeah.
stormwater retention.
Yeah. And see whether that works for them.
Yeah, okay, so we can have further investigation.
A little bit of water leak.
Okay, 10.2, growth and renewal for infrastructure development program grant.
Okay, so I have this, what I did is, so there's two elements to this. I'm conscious of time.
It's okay.
Well, I don't want to,
Take your time, man. I'm up for the duration now anyway.
at the heart of this, if nothing else, I need a resolution in support of a grant application. But what I was going to do, for the benefit of certainly new councillors around the table and a refresh for existing or returning councillors, was just go over our active grant, where we are in terms of our active grant files right now. So I'll do it, but I'll skip it. I'll just skip through some stuff. I will skip through that, and I was also skip through that. So one of the things that I wanted to sort of get to was this. So these are our active grant files. So I'm just trying to read the room. So there is an ongoing administrative load, and I think sometimes that gets overlooked. But what we're creating is some internal sort of processes to sort of better manage that. And the other thing I will note too is that project end dates can be tricky because we're navigating some contractor capacity as well as some permitting issues. So sometimes, but what's really important as part of that process is ensuring effective communications with our funders. So I just wanted to highlight for your reference, these are the active grant files we currently have. And I've got this cool little new gadget, by the way. So I can zoom in, or not. Busted. Oh no, wait, is it this one?
I don't know.
There it is. There, so I can zoom in on and show you. Well, it won't zoom.
That's just a flashlight.
But it highlights there. Thank you. It doesn't zoom. You're correct, Councillor Vino. But it's not set up right. This is brand new, so we're trying it out. Okay. All right. Briefly, we have two active PCAP programs. So the first one was we tried to do some test well study in Middle River. Those were unsuccessful. So what we've done is change the scope to apply that unused funding to the Community Wells program that's in development. So that's active. The other PCAP is for the hydrological study at Robinson's Corner. That's also active.
Tara, you want to say?
I just want you to explain, or what's the acronym?
PCAP,
For those who
Provincial
don't know
Capital
what that is.
Assistance Program. So, and their small, PCAP is a small program in that it basically is usually for like studies and things of that nature that could lead to larger capital programs down the road. So it's a bit of a seed fund program. That's how the province structures it. So that's a provincial program and so on. We have two large, well, more than two, but we have two investing in Canada infrastructure program grants. So these are large infrastructure ones. So the first one is the active transportation one. So that's, oh no, I did the wrong button again. Yeah, so it doesn't work that well, does it? Anyway, so these are our funding partnerships. The funding formula is 40% federal, 33% provincial, 27% us. And that's applied to both the Phase 1 and 2 sidewalks and the Gold River Bridge. The original scope for that project was much larger, but we've had to sort of change that for a whole host of reasons. Also attached to that program, we received a strategic funding investment from the province for the Gold River Bridge demolition. Obviously, we may be changing that direction with that project, and if that's the case, we would have to sort of have a conversation to see if we can apply that $1 million to something else within the scope of the, for rehabilitation or whatnot.
That makes sense, yeah.
The other ICIP is in respect to the Village of Chester wastewater system renewal and expansion project. So this is a system expansion at Stamford Lake, a whole bunch of lift station upgrades, and a new wastewater treatment plant. Again, same formula with the federal and provincial governments for a total project amount of $8.34 million. The Sustainable Services Growth Fund, that's a provincial program. It wasn't a grant application. We just received $672,021 from the province, and then we had questions as to what it was. I contacted the province and said, what is this money? And they said, oh, you didn't get the letter yet, it's on its way, which explained. Anyway, so we know what it is. And where you applied that by council motion to Wild Rose Park Phase 2 upgrades in the amount of $300,000, and then additional stacking we're applying to the Phase 2 sidewalks. The Housing Accelerator Fund, through the Canada Mortgage Housing Corporation, we were awarded $1.986 million by formula, and by formula that is the number of houses that the program we said would incent produce that calculation of amount. Of that money, 1.109 million is for a capital project. So we're, again, because the program allows additional stacking, we're applying it to the Village of Chester program, wastewater program. Cool. So what's really important here to note is that way in which we can use funds to leverage and stack and maximize the sort of our bang for our buck, and maximize the leverage we can get from funding from other funding partners. Well, the most recent one would be the Municipal Capital Growth Program. Again, provincial program. This is for the Chester Basin project. This is the 50% cost share funding formula. The total project amount was $8.2 million. We'd also applied for a federal DMAP program, which is Disaster Mitigation and Adaptation Fund. We were unsuccessful in that application. So we have the NGA is a cost share based on the $4.5 million. So new programs. So the first is GRID and these acronyms, Growth and Renewal Infrastructure Development Program. So this is what is the focus of this report here, and we're looking for council support on this project. So the intention is to apply for the amount for the Village of Chester. The Village of Chester plant above and beyond what was originally in the ICIP project scope. So what council has approved was an additional $9.2 million for a new system rather than rehabilitation to the existing system. And this would enable, we can accommodate future growth. It's a scalable system. It's much more effective and so on. So that's what, so that this lends itself to that project in that sense.
So would we be using the new property that we bought out there to put the new?
Oh, this is the Village of Chester one. So the grid is
well,
for
we bought a house and everything right next to our old existing plant.
for the Chester for the Chester Basin one.
In Chester.
Oh, the Chester. Well, that's right. That's right. So the way it would be built, it would be built next to the existing one and then
That's
decommissioned.
what I was asking.
I don't, got to turn my own mic on. I don't believe it's on the adjacent property. I think we can accommodate
Oh,
it
it's still on
on
the
the footprint
existing
of the
footprint.
existing property, I believe, or most of it is. But we've already, council's already approved
Yes.
this project. This would just be taking advantage of this
money.
growth opportunity, or
Yeah.
this grant opportunity to apply it to that
That's
project.
exactly it.
Why not?
So, and then I'll just skip through then. So in your report, so the program, see, what this grid program is
Might as well ask for
effectively
the money.
does is it allows municipalities to sort of do much more in terms of applying financial stacking to existing. So it liberates, because normally there are limits on how much you can receive
stack, yeah.
from either the province or the federal government. This enables us to circumvent that. And this is in recognition from the province as to how the inflationary pressure on existing projects is basically means there's tons of cost overruns. The grid program has a total program budget of $15 million for submissions from all municipalities. As I said, it's a 50% cost share funding formula. Projects need to be completed by the end of March 31st, 2026, and it requires a council resolution. Eligible projects, they're the usual: water and wastewater systems, climate change adaptation, accessibility. The one thing I will note is that and this speaks to the other new federal program, is that climate risk assessments are becoming more and more of a requirement. So when we undertake projects for the CHIP program, which is the federal program, we have to keep that in mind, that part of our work will need to sort of address the climate risk assessments. So just again, in October 2023, Council approved a design for the new plant, as noted. This project, the proposed project for grid, will offset the cost of that new wastewater treatment plant. The reason why there's several reasons why we're recommending the Village of Chester wastewater treatment plant for grid, but one of which is that this in bold is from the application guidelines. This program is funding priorities for shovel-ready projects, projects with other funding sources already secured, or projects that will proceed regardless of securing other funding sources, which is exactly the situation here. But in terms of evaluation criteria, it also checks off most of these boxes. So critical capacity issue, immediate environmental and health and safety issue, design and implement impacts of climate change. It will enable new housing development, and it's a project ready to go. So what we're asking for then is we would submit that as a total project cost, the full 9.2 million. So with a cost share of 50% of that. Given the size of the program of $50 million, it's unlikely we will receive $4.6 million. But following some discussions with the province, it's certainly something around $2 million is certainly
There's
not.
$2 million that we don't have now.
Exactly.
Why wouldn't we ask for it?
So were we to secure that, so that certainly provides council with some budgetary flexibility in other areas. Given the So what I'm looking for then in this report is basically that the recommended motion is before you. I'm looking for, so be resolved that the Municipality of District of Chester submit the project titled Village of Chester Wastewater Treatment Plant Renewal for funding to the 2024-25 Growth and Renewal for Infrastructure Development Program, and be it further resolved that Council supports the project and commits to provide its share of at least 50% or $4.613 million of the estimated 9.266 total eligible project
Well,
cost.
we're already going to do it, so why wouldn't we? Anybody want to move that we do it? Seconder? Moved by Tom, seconded by Della. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Yeah, even if we get $1 million, well, $1 million we don't have.
So that project deadline is December 13th. There is also a federal program, the Canada Housing Infrastructure Fund, and that is due the end of March for a direct stream. That is directly to the Housing Infrastructure and Communities Canada. But what I suggest for that one is that we have a couple of possible options, but what I'm suggesting we bring to council even, a full scope for that. The principal idea though, is that we could apply for additional funding for the Chester Basin project to that one.
Nice.
Why not? Yeah.
Okay, so we'll follow up with that.
Yeah. Tina?
Yeah, I have a question. It's not related to the motion. I'm in full support of that. Oh, sorry about that, Deputy Warden Asif. I have a question, and it's not related to the motion. I'm in full support of that, but it's going back a few slides in your recent presentation. I know you had a lot on the agenda tonight, Jonathan, but it's around stacking. So I'm very curious, because, you know, it's the same funder, in a lot of these cases, it's the province, I think, that are throwing in some of these new programs, even though the housing one that you just referenced, due the end of March, that's federal, obviously, we know that. Are there any limitations? Because I'm a bit challenged in the fact that we place our own limitations with our grant funding to community groups, as do the province and the feds. But yet, we seem to be, as a municipal government, I guess, are we limited at all? Like, it's poo-pooed when it comes to, you know, achieving that 100%, because it's not really a good thing, but yet we seem to have a different measuring stick or something.
Yeah, well, I had further details in about the whole landscape, but I didn't want to delve further into it. But the one thing I will state is that there are normally, yes, sort of financial stacking limitations as to what you can and cannot do. But what we have is with the grid program in particular, and also with the upcoming federal CHIF program, is that they seem to be waiving these or allowing flexibility, I should say.
They want more money spent on this.
And there's a number of reasons they're doing that. One is the cost of construction projects.
Yeah.
The inflationary pressure is astronomical, as you know.
It's wild.
And the other is about sort of trying to fast track already shovel-ready projects. So I think the challenge in when these opportunities arise, they usually have a fairly quick turnaround time, and it's about having ready at hand a project that we can apply to that. So if it's a combination of we have a project that's already ready, we're going ahead with it, and also there's financial stacking flexibility, then it just lends itself to being
Why not?
Yeah.
providing that or accessing that financial leverage.
Okay, perfect. I just have another couple of questions, because I certainly have interested. The acronyms that you're using, GRID and CHIP and so on, and we didn't get this presentation, I'm not saying that we
That's
should
right.
have, but I would like to know a bit more around eligible applicants. Is it just simply municipal governments?
No, it's not. There's
Excellent.
it's mostly municipal governments, but sometimes it can be community organizations. Sometimes it's certainly indigenous groups and so on and so forth. It all depends on the grant program itself.
Okay, excellent. So I'll continue my discussion with Jonathan tomorrow or
Yeah, to just find out
next
whether
week?
any of your projects are eligible.
Absolutely, because I can tell you, we're shovel-ready. Well, not quite. The group will be coming to the municipality to council on a site plan approval, so, yeah.
Oh, nice.
Okay, so that's it, people. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried.